PK, I'm gonna rant a little bit here. You're gonna be my therapist.
Ooh.
I'm sitting on the couch, and I'm just gonna let it all out with this week. The mortgage interest rates went diabolic. They were all over the place this week. I mean, if you were locking in to a 30-year fixed loan, you could have locked in at 30 for 30 years. You could have locked in at 3.5 one day, 3.7 a different day, 3.875 it got as high as. That was the day the 10-year popped up and hit a 2-year high. You could have been at 3.65, between 3.5 and 3.875 on any given moment this week were the 30-year fixed rates on average on what a borrower with good credit, Pat, with good credit. A borrower with not so good credit, they actually hit 3.99 on a 30-year fixed rate this week. So good credit was 3.5 to 3.875, which is such a wide spread, a lot more volatility that we've seen, certainly in the last year on the interest rate for 30-year fixed loans. And, it's all due to what's happening with that 10-year yield. Ivy Zellman, she's one of the top real estate economists in the country. And she had a line in Q4 of 2020. I mean, she saw this coming, and she talked about inflation is going to happen, and then you're going to start to see that 10-year go up, and then you're going to start to see mortgage interest rates go up. And what she said on this podcast in Q4 of 2020, because it was all like real estate agents listening, was the audience. It was a Tom Ferry podcast. She said, if you haven't focused on the 10-year yield as a real estate agent, you need to be educated. If you walked into my house and you wanted to list it, I would completely take you down if you didn't know some of these simple things. So, Pat, since you and I think, and Ivy Zellman thinks this is a simple thing to track the 10-year, what's the 10-year and kind of what does it impact? It's the biggest direct impact on these mortgage interest rates. We saw that this week. You walked me through before the show kind of where the 10-year went last year and potentially what's happening right now. But simplest form, what's the 10-year? And then walk us through where we've been with it the last year or so.
Yeah, I mean, 10-year treasury really represents the basic cost of borrowing money for most institutions. In and of itself, you're not buying a lot of treasuries, right? But most people are, mortgage industries especially, right? Use that as their benchmark of what does it cost to borrow money and what can I get it for, right? So we watched in the last week, we started the week, obviously Monday, markets were closed, right? So we started the week on Tuesday at 1.792, got up to 1.9, middle of the day on Wednesday, which got everybody's attention really, really fast. And that's when you started to see those spikes over in the mortgage world, and the B phase and the rest of our mortgage compadres were probably losing their minds trying to figure out what was going next. And then we ended at 1.763. All right, that's quite a run for something like that in 4 days. Very similar to obviously what you just talked about, but not unheard of yet. Or I'm sorry, not unheard of in the last 18 months even. You and I were talking off air before we got on here. We've had 3 of these kind of runs now in the last year since the beginning of 2020. This one's just the sharpest in terms of length, right? It's the most truncated timeline, and it was just a super quick spike, which is why all of a sudden we had this run, not just in the opposite direction in the markets, right? Because obviously as rates start to go up, the markets start to pull back a little. The biggest thing it affects, if you look at the stock market, is the NASDAQ. So
it impacted my entire portfolio in the stock market, Pat. I feel like every stock I have was smacked in the face this week.
Especially if you're tech heavy, right? So especially if you're tech heavy, so tech is very growth oriented, takes a lot of capital to run a lot of those companies. And when you can go somewhere a little safer or a little less scary and get a yield now because you weren't able to for so long, a lot of institutional buyers will start to look at that, right? So they'll start looking at bonds and more conservative investments because now they're actually able to earn 1.5%, 2%, 2.5% without taking on the risk that is, the Teslas and the Zillows and the Matterports of the world. And
I have 2 of those 3.
I didn't pick those completely randomly, but and start to own something like that, you're going to start to see a little bit of pullback, right? That's, you go to the bank for the last decade and you get nothing point nothing on your savings account, right? You get nothing point nothing on CDs. There's no place to get any yield. As the 10-year starts to rise, you'll see those things start to change, and you can get, it's still very modest, but you can get a little better, safer return. And so people are taking out of higher risk and just trimming back a little. You and I, again, were talking about this before. If you're the average retail investor right now who's putting money into their 401k every 2 weeks, you're pumped right now, where you should be. I understand that your balance went down and you look at your statement and go, oh no, but you're still accumulating. You own the same number of the things. They're just worth a little bit less right now, which means you can buy them for less money. Keep buying them for less money, keep accumulating those things. And then when the markets return, because the market always returns, sometimes it takes a year, sometimes it takes 10. You know, we look at 0809, you'll have more for less.
The initial problem right now, when we look at housing for buyers, is that at the end of the week this week, any buyer that wasn't locked into a 30-year fixed rate now could afford less house than they could before. If they were if you were cash, didn't matter. But if you were borrowing money, if you were borrowing a traditional 30-year fixed rate, on average, that buyer could afford less house. But the home values are continuing to go up, and the inventory is still not coming on the market. So they have little to choose from. They have home values that keep going up because with the little bit of inventory that's on the market, this is why it's such a power position right now for anybody looking to sell their home. There's still multiple offers on these homes that are available because there's so few of them. And, maybe the 7, 8, 9, and 10 offer on this house, when they've got 10 offers, they were the ones most impacted, and they can afford less, so they can put in maybe a little bit less of an offer. But Pat, I'm hearing from agents every single day that every agent that's active in this market since January 1, they've lost a deal or two for their buyers, meaning they came in, second place or behind when they put an offer in on a property. And the majority of them are like, we're getting beat out by cash offers. There's so many cash offers right now in this winter real estate market. Talk to lenders, they're saying the same thing, like, they got people that are pre-approved that just keep getting beat out by cash, and so, and there's things you can do. If you're a buyer, there are things you can do with a mortgage-backed offer to beat cash. But, obviously cash is clean. If you take out, there won't be an appraisal. And if you take out inspections, it gets pretty difficult to beat those terms. And if the cash buyer is like, hey, we'll close whenever you want, seller, whether that's, soon or later, then it gets really difficult to beat. And if they're the highest price, it's basically impossible.
Then it is cash is king.
So Pat, 2.74. We ended the week at about, we did hit 3.75 this week, and we ended a little bit over 3.6. That's with good credit. If you don't have great credit, you'd probably end up at 3.75, which is a full percent up from where we were last year on the 30-year fixed. And we haven't seen prices go down. I'm talking about that historical number. Go up 1%, you'll see home values go down 10%. Now, we just hit this 3.75 number. Just in December rather of 21, we were at 3. So, we're just hitting this like extra 0.75% where, historically, if we had normal inventory, you'd probably see a 10% drop in home values. I don't see it happening because there's so little homes to choose from and there's enormous buyer demand. Sellers are getting multiple offers on their homes right now. If they're not, there's a major, major problem in marketing, presentation, reach, pricing, one of those issues. But last year, Pat, we sat basically from 2.75 to 3 the entire year. It was very steady on the 30-year fixed.
There was not, I think the largest move in either direction was about a quarter point. It wasn't anything crazy up or down. I think in either direction. The other thing I'm wondering too, obviously your inventory is there is none, right? So obviously that's going to be, but I think what I'm curious about, would be interested to see is how long 375 is sustained, right? Like if 375 is a transitory thing where in 2 or 3 weeks it goes back down again because the 10-year has repealed itself down a little bit from 1.8 to 1.6. Are people waiting it out, do you think, in terms of borrowers, or are they trying to rush in because they're afraid it's going to go the other direction? I don't know. Well, I haven't seen that on my side.
This is where agents got to really do a good job of helping educate their buyers, and mortgage lenders too. Got to educate their buyers, because somebody that checks in on, like, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, they might have gotten quoted at 3.875. And if they were watching last year, it's like, whoa, this is up a full percent. This is really increasing my monthly mortgage payment. But to your point, Freddie Mac predicts that we're going to be at 3.5 all year. Like the average all year is going to be 3.5. So if Freddie Mac is right on their projections, then yeah, this week was a volatile week and it's going to come down at some point. But if Mortgage Banker Association is right, they believe by the end of the year, we're going to cap out at 4%. Bank rate, I believe, is at 4%. And so that means we are going to see these little, volatile weeks where you get up to 3.8, 3.9, and it probably does come down at some point at 3.5. But over the course of this year, it's going to steadily increase all the way to 4. Then you probably want to say, I'm going to go earlier in the year on locking in my rate and really getting aggressive on finding my house. So, it depends on who's right. There's no question that you don't see anybody predicting 3 being available like it was all of last year on the 30-year fixed rate. I mean, Pat, how many times did I say last year, just take this cheap money? Or at the end of 22 when it was, or of 20 rather, the end of 2020 when it was 2.75. I saw people get locked in with great credit on 15 years at 2%. Some people at 2.25, 2.5. But I mean, December of 2020, it got as low as 2.68 on the average 30-year fix, according to Freddie Mac. Those numbers are gone. So you're definitely looking at 3.5 being a good rate. Now, we're basically back, Pat, which is interesting, to January, February, March, quarter one of 2020. Quarter one of 2020, the average was 3.5. It was basically 3.5. You had 3.62 30-year fixed rate in January. You had 3.47 in February. You had 3.45 in March. So quick, simple math. You're talking about 3.5 in quarter one of 2020. That's basically where we're at right now. And so we're back to pre-pandemic levels. Now, how quickly and when will it get back to 2018 and 2019? The 2018 30-year fixed mortgage rates, those will have an impact on home values if we get there. 2018 was the worst. The annual average was 4.54. If we quickly
touched 5 a couple times.
It touched 5. Yeah. If we quickly got to a 4.5 average, you will see home values drop. I don't care what inventory does, because so many people at that point will get priced out of the market.